and let's talk about the 2023 season and what your expectations are for West Virginia. I'm going to pull up the tweet here regarding the Big 12 season, your Big 12 season projection.
Yes, projected
And
conference standings.
Yeah, conference standings. I know
There
this
you
is
go.
not. I know this is not final. You're going to make some tweaks to it. Am I right?
Yes, correct. And there'll be minor tweaks. And actually, I see what you're showing on the screen. I've got a couple of screens here, and I'm looking at what I have too, so I can talk about any major differences. Actually, it looks good for West Virginia, so I'll get to that too. But
yeah, you don't have us last. Thank you.
I don't have you last, and actually, the numbers I'm looking at right now, which have been updated slightly from the ones that I posted, and then we reflected in my upcoming post with the finalized preseason ratings, are actually a little bit better for West Virginia. So before I get to that, yeah, you were going. You want me to explain this a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So what you're looking at here, and I have this for all 10 conferences plus the independents up on my website. What I'm looking at here is using my power ratings, my preseason numbers. What can each team relatively expect within conference play this year? So for me, as I'm looking at it, the way you read this, let's use West Virginia column here. By my numbers, there's a 1% chance that West Virginia makes it to the conference championship game this year. They are power rated number 58 nationally in my numbers. On average, West Virginia, I'm projecting 3.2 conference wins. There is, by my numbers, less than a 1% chance that West Virginia reaches 8 or 9 conference wins. There's a 1% chance they reach 7, a 4% chance they reach 6, so on and so forth. The most likely outcome here for West Virginia within conference play is 3 and 6, with a 29% chance to land right on 3. There's a 2% chance that West Virginia goes 0 and 9 in conference play this year. The updated numbers, as I'm looking at them on my screen, I still have West Virginia with a 1% chance, but they're number 55 in the updated power rating. So they've risen 3 spots in the power ratings. Projected conference wins go up to 3.3 instead of 3.2. So it's not a lot, but 3.3. And 3 and 6 is still the most likely, with a 28% chance to reach that win total or that record in conference play this year. So that's how you read this table. That's what it's saying. Texas, as you can see, and Oklahoma are the 2 favorites for me in the Big 12. And people will say, yes, but you say that every year. Everyone says that every year. I agree. Something feels a little different about Texas this year. My numbers are high on them, I know, but I do think Texas, now I'm giving them a 70% chance, not a 72, to make the conference championship game. Oklahoma at a 46, not 48. Here's how as I try to separate, and this is hard for me sometimes, as I try to separate KFordRatings, the model, and Kelley Ford, the person, with my opinions and my subjectivity, which I know is dangerous to put out there, as I've learned, but here, the model thinks it's going to be Texas and Oklahoma from a probability standpoint in Arlington. I think it will be Texas or Oklahoma with a lean towards Texas. And I think another spot will be taken most likely by some team from the Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech grouping. I think either Texas or Oklahoma, and I think either Kansas State, TCU, or Texas Tech will comprise the Big 12 championship this year. But last year, TCU made it, obviously, and they came out of nowhere. No one expected that. And so a team could do that this year. I'm not projecting it. If you are, that's probably not a very good model, even if it ends up being right. TCU was an outlier team last year. And so you make your peace with that and you learn from it and move on. But from a projection standpoint, you're playing the odds here. That's how I would kind of stack it up. Certainly, I think, Baylor, UCF, Oklahoma State, for one reason or another, have a chance to make the conference championship game. Baylor, is a pretty good power rated team. UCF could make some noise with a nice schedule first year in the Big 12. Oklahoma State has a very easy schedule by Power 5 standards, and within the Big 12, it's the easiest schedule there is. And then there really is kind of a drop off there with Cincinnati, Iowa State, West Virginia, BYU, Kansas, and Houston that are kind of rounding out that bottom group. That's not to say a team from there couldn't make a run. One of those teams probably will end up in the top 4 of the standings at the end of the year if it works, if games are played the way we are. Are you going to be able to win close games? That's what it's going to boil down to. But yeah, that's what the projected Big 12 standings are all about. And again, you can see that for all the conferences on my website.
Question: does all the stuff going on in Iowa State with the gambling, losing Hunter Deckers, losing Jarrell Brock, did that impact where you have them on this list at all?
Yes, it did. And I'm still trying to, that's one of the things that's still outstanding, is I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What are we looking at? What are the final decisions being made? So yes, what Iowa State you're seeing on the screen here, they have been dinged, and they are more lowly power rated in the updated ones. And that's not to say that I couldn't make further power rating adjustments for them right before the season or even after the season starts, and we see the impacts of these even more. So yes, Iowa State, like right now I have them power rated ahead of West Virginia, as you can see, and they are in the update too, but by a lesser margin.
Right.
I would actually be surprised based on what we know at this moment in time if West Virginia is a worse team than Iowa State this year. But again, I don't make manual adjustments to the numbers. Kelley Ford, the person, can look at them and make tweaks and changes and talk about things. But the numbers are the numbers. This is what the model is saying. It's not perfect. I've never expressed it to be that way. No model is. It's right more than it's wrong, though, I will say. It was right about West Virginia last year, which was an unpopular thing I remember West Virginia fans were on me last year, too, about my projections. It ended up being right about the Mountaineers. As I look back, I had actually projected 5.5 wins for West Virginia last year in the regular season.
Okay.
They get to 5. Most fans were saying that's ridiculous. We're going to get 7 or 8. I said 5.5. They ended up getting 5, actually, to come in below the expectation, but not by much. So I was pretty dialed in on West Virginia last year. I expect I got a good feel of them this year, but Iowa State's a team. The reason I'm saying this, Iowa State's a team that I fully expect they're going to underachieve my expectations because of the things that are going on that I probably can't fully capture coming into the model here.
Right. Now, this is all based on numbers, right?
Correct.
This is all okay. Is coaching factored in at all in these numbers?
Implicitly.
And I'll tell you the reason I asked the question is because in most of the national media that you listen to, who's low on West Virginia, a lot of them bring up the Neil Brown effect, him being on the hot seat, all that stuff. Does that play a role at all in your standings and in your numbers?
Implicitly, yes. Explicitly, no. And coaching staffs and stylistic play and scheme and all of that, I am working on a way to try to incorporate those better into the model. I have not found a way to do so that yields significant improvement with predictability. And so I have not done that yet. It certainly won't be going in for the 2023 season, but that is high on my list of 2024 summer projects to try to figure out, is there a way to do that? Because I absolutely agree that coaching plays a large part in college football and college football games and certainly should be accounted for in models. Some of that stuff is very hard to quantify, and I'm working on it, but I don't have it explicitly. But there is an implicit implication with some of the other inputs that are in there.
So you look at returning production, right, is a factor.
Yep.
What else do you look at?
So in the preseason, you're looking at returning production, you're looking at recent recruiting, and you're looking at the recent KFordRatings. Those are really the 3 inputs that we're doing in the preseason. Once we get going into the season, you're really starting to look at the preseason component gets devalued and phased out, while then in-season data, which is more informative, comes in and takes its place. And so in the season, you're using actual in-season football game data, the predictive aspects of football to inform the model and to create the power ratings for the teams. But of course, in the preseason, we don't have any of those, so we don't use them.
Right. All right. Just a lot of people may not be familiar with your KFordRatings. You keep bringing that up as one of your primary metrics, or maybe the primary metric that you use. What do you use to quantify, or what metrics do you use in evaluating teams on your KFordRatings?
Yeah, for sure. So my model, when I started out, Bill Connolly with S&P Plus at the time and Brian Fremeau with FEI, those were the two godfathers of college football analytics. So for me, before I even started, I'd been following them for a long time, following their work, reading their articles, watching any interviews they were doing, keeping up with their numbers. That was kind of how I viewed college football. And I do have a math science background, mechanical engineering undergraduate, even though I don't work in that field anymore. I've always liked numbers. They've always kind of come easily to me, and college football has always been my favorite sport. So trying to take that approach with the numbers and apply it to college football was something that was of natural interest to me. And after enough years of watching Bill and Brian, I said, you know what, I'm going to try to do this thing myself. So I built my model at the base level very similarly to Bill's SP Plus. And so I'm looking at some of the same things he is now as I've gotten going. And, I've experienced things for myself, and I have my own data set now that I'm back testing every summer and always playing with the weights of things and what leads to the greatest predictability. I've probably gotten a little bit farther away from SP Plus than I was at the very beginning, as I was really just replicating and trying to figure out, not to the same degree, but trying to figure out okay, Bill has great success doing it this way. I'm going to start this way and go on my own and learn that. So, the 5 factors that he made famous, you're talking about efficiency, explosiveness, field position, finishing drives and turnovers. Those are the things that probably get the most attention in the college football predictive analytics space. And those are not new things. There's other things that are being discussed and talked about and uncovered as we're moving forward here. And those are being implemented too. I'm finding my own things that I kind of keep behind the curtain as the secret sauce of my own to try to differentiate my ratings from the others out there. And so those are the types of things we're looking at, though, from a power rating standpoint. You're not looking at wins and losses. Wins and losses are primary drivers of my resume rankings, my most deserving rankings. But from a power rating standpoint, a team could go 0-12 and still be power rated theoretically in the top 15 of a predictive rating set. If you played the best 12 teams in the country all on the road and you outplayed them in every single game but lost because of a fluky turnover or a missed field goal or what, like, you could lay out a very unlikely but theoretical scenario where a team doesn't win a single game but is still among the best in the country from a talent standpoint because of the schedule they played, because of the way that the games happened. All of that is power rating world stuff. In a resume ranking, that team is not going to be ranked anywhere near the top 25 or the top 50. That'd actually be at the very bottom, because if you have no wins, your numerator is going to be 0. But you're not going to be anywhere near where you'd want to be from a team that's power rated that high if you're not getting the results. At the end of the day, rankings are what matter. I like my most deserving ranking application better because I'm able to stack teams up and look at, okay, who's achieved the most relative to what would be expected of them given the schedule and all that stuff. But power ratings don't care at all about wins and losses. So that's kind of what goes into those and the difference between ratings and rankings. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it, and they proved to be pretty predictive and to have a good performance with regard to absolute air and against the spread records and things like that relative to the Vegas lines. It's not gonna beat Vegas 100% of the time. I mean, nothing does, but in terms of trying to get over that kind of 52% that you need to be profitable, which that's not what I'm doing. I work in college athletics. I don't bet on college football or any sport because I'm not allowed to for my job. Even if I was, I wouldn't. But my numbers can't, because I don't really enjoy that aspect of it. I know I'm in the minority there. Many people do. My numbers can be used for those purposes, and those that have used them have experienced success over the years. But again, that's not the primary purpose of them. That's not why I created them. That's not why I update them. But I understand the world in which we're living and how popular that is for many people.
Yep, makes sense. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com, or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. Funny you mentioned the things that the rating system is based on: efficiency, explosiveness, turnovers, just to name a few. Almost every press conference, Neil Brown will bring one of those or all of them up as things they're working on improving. They're wanting to have more explosive plays. They're wanting to be more efficient. They're wanting to, obviously get more turnovers, because I think they intercepted 4 passes the entire season last year. They just, they have not been able to force turnovers. So that's, obviously something they're working on. And that was a lot of the players they got out of the portal this year. That was especially on the defensive side. That's one of the things they looked at primarily was, can this guy go get the football? Can he cause turnovers? So coaches are looking, and Neil Brown's a very analytical guy. So he's probably, heck, he might be looking at your system. Who knows? But I'm sure he's looking at those types of things. And as most coaches probably do, some more than others. But Neil's a very analytical guy. I mean, he makes a lot of his in-game decisions based on analytics he looked at before the game, which drives us nuts, because it's like, can you not just base it on the moment, what's going on right now in the game, instead of basing it on numbers that, don't always tell the whole story, right? Especially once the game starts and everything changes.
And I want to touch on that too. You mentioned some of those coaches. Yes, many of them are looking at that. Some of them actually do follow me. Those are always fun. Some FBS or Power 5 football coaches. Those are always fun to see come across the Twitter timeline. But
I'm sure
Neil Brown, I don't believe is one of them. At least yet. Well, maybe we can change that. But yeah, I like his approach to the game. I know it hasn't yielded some of the results that West Virginia fans would hope for, but it's process oriented over results oriented. And so you mentioned analytics don't tell the full story. You have to take into account things that are happening in the game. I agree with that 100%. While I am very analytical minded and I'm driven by the numbers, I fully recognize, admit, and openly discuss no model, including mine, tells the full story. What we should do is aggregate a bunch of models together to kind of get maybe a true power rating of a team. So you're getting rid of outliers and all that. But even then, you're not telling the whole story of a team because there are things that mathematical models cannot capture about teams. South Carolina is a good example of that for me. Iowa, special teams and defense, is a good example of that for me. There are teams out there, there are programs out there that have things going on that are intangible. There are these synergies in the program that if moving in the right direction can help you overachieve your expectations. If moving in the wrong direction will lead to you underachieving expectations. And that's not a slight on a model or math. There are just things we can't capture. And so, yes, I think it takes both kinds. It takes art and science. But yeah, that's Neil Brown and other coaches likely harp on those things because those are the factors of football. Those are the aspects of football that are proven over large sample sizes to lead to the results that you want, to lead to wins. The problem that we run into a lot of times in college football is we have very small sample sizes. Over the course of 162 game season in baseball, those predictive factors are going to rise to the top because you have so many games that are being played. If you are hitting the benchmarks that you want to hit in baseball, you're going to have a successful year. You're going to be a successful team. In college football, when you have 12 games, in some cases 13, and then you get postseason and all that, when you have 12 regular season games, you could do everything right. But because you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds playing with an oblong ball who maybe broke up with their girlfriend last night or failed a test or had something going on in their family life, like we don't know these things. And when your sample size is so small, it can lead to results that even if your process was good, you don't like the results. And I think we're seeing some of that with West Virginia in particular, as well as many other programs. But that's why it's so difficult sometimes to judge college football teams. And you say, oh, well, they played an FCS team. What you can't get any actual meaningful data from that. Well, we have to, because if we don't do that, now you're looking at 11 games, right? And so, yeah, you're adjusting for opponent and situation and all those different things. But if you're not trying to take data from every single opportunity you have in a snapshot of a college football team, then you're missing out because there aren't enough to go around and just say, we're going to discard that game. Like you can say that was an anomaly, probably won't happen again, but it's going to help inform the model the next week. That's for sure. And carry some weight moving forward. So yeah, that's probably a little bit nerdier than we wanted to get, but I think that's important context for fans just to consider before just dismissing power ratings or numbers in general, because they don't right off the surface tell the story that you want them to tell. Because sometimes they don't. And sometimes they don't tell the story I want to tell. And I dive in and say, why is it this? Why are we looking at it this way? So that's just kind of anecdotal, but I think important context.
Right. Question for you, as you were talking, I thought of something that when looking at numbers, when you look at returning production, efficiency, explosiveness, all of that, it's all in the preseason. It obviously has to be based on last season, right? Because that's all only data you have. When you have a team like West Virginia, who's going to have a new starting quarterback, who we know very little how he's going to perform, it's Neil hasn't named a starter yet, but we all believe it's going to be Garrett Green more than likely. Does it make it harder, or do you find in your experience that the numbers in those situations are not as accurate a lot of times, or does it still usually play out the way the numbers show?
It is harder, and those teams do. I do have a larger error bar on those types of teams that experience high turnover, and that's high turnover on the roster or on the coaching staff.
Right.
Wisconsin's another example that people have talked about with me recently. They're like, why do you have Wisconsin as a favorite? There's so much turnover there. They're changing their style of play. They're bringing in all these new players. Yes, I know. And I have a bigger air expectancy with Wisconsin and in West Virginia because of the amount of turnover that you're having, because of the unknowns at important positions that's being captured in returning production. But if you have either a coaching change that brings in a whole new staff or roster turnover to the effect of USC in 2022 or Colorado in 2023, you got to have a preseason rating. So what's it going to look like? You're trying to kind of find that middle ground of, man, this could go really great. This could go really poorly. Let's try to thread the needle and go between and figure out, where we're going to go. Teams like that, like the Colorado this year, like Wisconsin this year, like West Virginia this year, they could experience a larger swing in their power rating earlier in the year than other teams, maybe like an Alabama or a Georgia or an Ohio State, who you kind of know what you're getting, or we think we know what we're getting coming into the year, even though Georgia and Ohio State are bringing in new quarterbacks too. Alabama as well, all of them actually. We kind of have an idea of what that team's going to look like based on the consistency they've had within their coaching staffs, based on the consistency they've had with their success and power ratings in recent years. West Virginia's weighted 4-year KFord rating, so that's the third component, is number 51 nationally. That's down 7 spots from a year ago at this time. So again, that's being captured into the model, but there is some uncertainty, and mathematicians, statisticians, people out there with their own models, numbers don't like uncertainty, but they're a reality. It's a part of working in predictive analytics, especially in this space with college football. So we're working to kind of minimize the outlier effect, but it's certainly there. And yes, I readily admit where the blind spots are in the model, where the weaknesses are, where it can improve. And I'm working on all those things, but that's where we are for now.
Right. Yeah. I was just curious because I like numbers, but I don't like them as much as somebody like yourself. My head starts spinning if I look at numbers too long. So,
mine does too after a while. Don't worry.
So I like to talk to folks like yourself who have a lot more experience, and you have some data now. You have enough data behind you that you can say, okay, here's why this team, or here's why the numbers for this team weren't where we thought they would be. Maybe because they had a different quarterback. Maybe the quarterback got injured. Maybe they brought in new coordinators. Whatever. I'm just throwing out different scenarios that could change the numbers, but even with that, I mean, like you said, your numbers have been pretty accurate over the years, and so you feel pretty confident in what you're putting out there, and that's I want to make sure I clarify that. I wasn't trying to poke holes in your model. I was just trying to ask a question for my own education and my listeners as well.
No doubt, I'm right there with you, and actually, on Twitter at WV Stats Guy Joel.
Yes.
He's a great West Virginia fan and someone who's really into the numbers, kind of like I am.
Right.
And he and I we go back and forth and talk about different things and all that. So he's great. I guess I'm giving shout out to Brandon Phoenix from the Raspy Voice Kid,
Yes.
another guy I really like on Twitter.
Yep.
So I talk about these things with West Virginia fans and fans all across the country. I certainly wasn't taking any offense to the questions, and like I said, I acknowledge and admit where I think the model can get better. It's been good, but it can always be better. And so that's what I work on every single summer.
Right. I got you. Well, guys, once again, reminder, this is Kelley Ford. He's over at thelines.com. You can find his work over there. You can find him on Twitter at KFordRatings, or I guess it's called X now. Find him on X at KFordRatings. You can find me at Couz at COUZ206 on X. Interact with us there. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can obviously see that on the screen. At the bottom of the screen, for those of you who are watching, I have the names of my channel members scrolling along the bottom. These are my club level members of the VIP, Couz's Corner VIP Club. And then I have pub level members as well, which is the introductory level over at Couz's Corner. So if you guys want to become a member of that club, be sure to hit the join button below the video. If you're listening on podcast platforms, be sure to please give me a rating. I would appreciate that. A good rating, hopefully. But Kelley, where else, other than the stuff I mentioned, where else can people find you again?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Couz. Overthelines.com, Saturday Glory with Calculated Risk, We Hate Your Team podcast as part of VSN Collegiate, but primarily it's Twitter, X, at KFordRatings, KFordRatings.com. That's where you can keep up with all the stuff. I'm just so excited for the 2023 college football season. I really am wishing West Virginia the best of luck. I'm excited to see what you guys got going on this year, and maybe you could be the TCU of last year and make a run unexpectedly to a conference championship game in the final year of the Big 12 as it's currently constructed. I'm really excited about the conference this year and the future of it. So it'll be fun, and I really appreciate you having me on, Couz, to talk more about this. And hopefully this helped answer some questions from some of the fans who were upset. But I get it. Everyone's going to have their opinion, and if you don't like mine, there's not much I can do about it other than try to say that's how I feel, and I've outlined why. So I appreciate it. This was so much fun, and
Not a problem.
we'll do it again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for coming on, Kelley. And those of you, don't forget to go check out all of Kelley's work. Follow him on X if you haven't yet. Kelley, once again, man, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Couz.
Q Country Roads, everybody.